Um, sorry, I got interrupted for a moment there. The Grace Johnson Leadership Institute runs an online people-focused leadership educational program. And we want to invite all participants to log in or that's log into the website and register for this program. Let me just give a rundown of the modules of the people-focused leadership educational program. There are 7 modules, beginning with the personality types of the leader and people skills. So the first module talks about personality types of the leader. In other words, understanding your individual personality type and also developing people skills. Secondly, we have a module on organizational behavior, very interesting module. Thirdly, a module on organizational communication. We also have a module on leading teams and creating shared vision. The 5th module is on conflict management. The 6th module is on culture and leadership. And the 7th module is reflection on people-focused, or reflections, I should say, on people-focused leadership, which is really to look back and review the course. So we encourage participants to kindly go to the PFL site, which will be shared in the course of this conference, and click on any of the modules, register, and it will enrich your leadership. At this time, I want to find out whether we are ready for the keynote address, so please give me a few moments to confirm this. We have, like I said, 3 presentations, a keynote address, and then we'll have 2 speakers. After those 3 presentations, there'll be time for questions and answers. We'll also be giving you some announcements at the end of the program. So at this point, can I welcome, I believe at this point I should welcome Kenny Akins to take her presentation. Kenny Akins, are you ready for your presentation? I think you can go first if you are ready. Okay, perhaps we should go to the second presentation. Is Damilola Ajayi ready to take what would have been actually the second presentation? Or the second presentation. Actually, Kenny Akins was to take the third, what would have been the, I'm sorry, there's a keynote address and then there are 2 presentations. So if the presentation by Damilola Ajayi is ready, we can go with that to start off the program, and we can take the other 2 after that. Media team, can I have some feedback as to whether that would work? Okay, so we would go with the presentation on leadership in the corporate world. Before the presentation is taken, I would need the bio of the speaker. Is it possible to share it on the screen? Okay. Damilola Ajayi, who is the Executive Director with Vetiva Capital Management, is a leading investment, Vetiva Capital Management, of which Damilola Ajayi is an ED, or Executive Director, is a leading investment banking firm in Nigeria. Damilola Ajayi has a BSc degree in computer science and is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. He's also a fellow of the Institute of Investment Advisors and Portfolio Managers, and a fellow of the Institute of Management Consultants of Nigeria. He is also a member of the Institute of Directors. Damilola Ajayi is passionate about leadership, strategy execution, and business coaching, and is a certified member of the John Maxwell team. He's also an alumnus of the Oxford University Executive Leadership Program and the University of Cape Town Executive and Management Coaching Program. He is happily married with 2 children. I want to yield the floor now for the presentation by Mr. Damilola Ajayi on leadership in the corporate world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2023 annual conference of the Grace Johnson. Of the conference for this year is Leadership and Nation Building. And I would like to thank the president of the Grace Johnson Leadership Institute, Grace Obi Johnson, for this theme and for this opportunity to be part of this conference. This session is a launch hour business session and is targeted at leaders in business. And I will be speaking to us on the topic strategy execution. You may ask, how is this relevant to nation building? Well, in the course of this conference, many ideas will be shared and developed as we receive insights from the various sessions. And in all, there will be a need for each of us to execute on the initiatives we leave this conference with. Hence, the relevance of the concept of how to execute ideas. Let me zero in on business people and organizational leaders. We're in the month of September, and very soon, by November or early December, many organizations will be having their annual retreats, in addition to the monthly and quarterly strategic planning meetings we've already had. And if we look at the good strategies we have come up with at these meetings, one can argue that we should be more effective at achieving our business and organizational goals. The question then is, why don't we? There are many factors we can choose to blame: currency devaluation, subsidy removal, high interest rates, competition. But as business leaders, there's a place of looking inwards. Sometimes the gap is due to weak strategy formulation, and I will encourage us to take one of the courses offered by the Grace Johnson Leadership Institute to learn more about that. But even more prevalent is the challenge of weak strategy execution. All of us as human beings tend to spend a lot more time planning and strategizing and coming up with excellent strategic ideas, but at many times, we don't focus on the discipline of execution. My objective today, therefore, is to put some perspective to this topic so that as business leaders, we can sharpen our execution competencies. As someone once said, planning without execution is like daydreaming without action. I look forward to the next 25 to 30 minutes or thereabout as we discuss this topic. Okay, before we proceed, I have a short quiz for us. And the quiz is titled, Are You a Strategic Thinker? In this quiz, I will describe a business scenario and then ask us to select from 3 options to see how we will react to the scenario. So let's have the question on the screen. So this is the scenario. You are an accountant in a clothing business, and the sales report for the month of August 2023 has just come in. And as the accountant, you had to review this report, and you have noticed that the business made only 30% of the sales target for the month. What will you do? Here are the options. Option 1, send out the sales reports to the sales team and tell them to look at it. Option 2, you think of a few ideas on how to remedy the low sales situation. but you wait to see if the CEO of your company will ask you for your recommendations on what the company should do, as sales is not your area of focus in the company. Option 3, you do some research on what the problem could be, and you suggest a meeting with the head of the sales team to discuss your ideas. So which of these options will you take? What will be your natural disposition? Let's review the options. If your answer was option 3, that is, you will seek a meeting with the head of sales to discuss your ideas, then you are a strategic thinker and you have a problem solver's attitude. Keep this up, but make sure that you are not intrusive and you don't approach the concept of problem solving like you know it more than anyone else. You need to be genuine in your intention to help. If your answer was option 2, that is, you actually took time to think about the problem, but you hesitated to engage, then you are probably a strategic thinker, but you should consider going out of your way to engage to help people. And again, emphasizing genuine intent. If you chose A, that is, you chose to mind your business and just send the report, it does not mean that you're not a good employee. You are probably doing an excellent job, but you need to consider being sensitive to the problems that come up in your environment and work on being a solution provider. This is especially important as you rise to senior positions in your career. Okay, I hope I've helped someone with that quiz. And I'd like to close this segment with this quote. Average people have great ideas. Legends have great execution. Now let's go to the next segment. What is strategy execution? Here we're going to unpack the concept of strategy execution and why it is important. To answer this, we need to define the word strategy so that we're all on the same page. And what I've done here is to look at a number of definitions and come up with my own definition based on my field experience as well. And for me, I would define strategy as a course of action or actions that is chosen by an organization amongst competing alternative courses of actions or plans for the accomplishment of a strategic business or organizational objective. Bottom line, strategy is really a decision on the path to take in achieving an objective. I hope this is clear. So if we agree on this, then strategy execution is the process of translating strategy into action. Let me repeat that. Strategy execution is the process of translating strategy into action. Let's simplify this with a diagram. So there you can see 4 boxes. The box on the top is the objective or the strategic intent, like we want to double our sales, etc. The next level, you have options of strategic actions that you can take. On the next level, you have an analysis of those options. And then that narrows down into a decision on which option to take. And then you have the execution of that decision. Let's look at an example. I'm running a hotel, and in 2024, I want to double my gross revenue from 500 million naira to 1 billion naira. What do I do? Okay, so the leaders of the business hold a strategy session, and we consider a number of options. For example, increase marketing budget, lower prices in the hope of higher occupancy rates that will compensate, or renovate the hotel to make it more attractive. So let's make it very simple. Assume out of these options, based on our understanding of market dynamics and competitor analysis and emerging consumer trends, our company at our retreat decides that the most effective option will be to renovate the hotel to attract more patronage. What do we call this decision? That's the strategic focus for 2024. So now that we have the strategy, all actions to ensure that the renovation of the hotel is done efficiently, on time, within budget, and to the quality envisaged, and how the new and improved look is communicated to the public to attract patronage, is the execution of the strategy. That's the game changer. So then why is strategy execution important? Let's look at this quote from Maurice Chang. You can see his picture there. Maurice Chang is a businessman known for excellent strategy execution. He's a Taiwanese American known as the father of the semiconductor business in Taiwan. And this is what he said: without a strategy, execution is aimless. Without execution, strategy is useless. Whatever strategies we come up with, no matter how excellent that strategy is, without execution, the strategy is useless. Let's look at an example of success in strategy execution. Let's look at Tesla. You see that logo? I'm sure you've heard of the company. Tesla's chosen strategy from the get-go was to be a premium high-end brand, and they've achieved it. As we speak, Tesla is ranked as the world's most valuable car brand, I believe. Toyota, which used to be the leader, is now second, and then you have Mercedes-Benz. So how did Tesla become so successful, especially in an industry where many have failed? The answer is clinical execution of strategy. Tesla for many years focused on only one thing, that is delivering on the brand promise, which is creating electric cars that could compete favorably in all parameters with traditional gasoline cars. So I'm not surprised that the market had to reward the brand. That's the power of execution, the ability to deliver on the plan. But it's easier said than done. In fact, I read a study that suggested that 3 out of every 4 organizations are weak at strategy execution by their own admission. This shows that there's a lot of work to do. So now let's look at what makes strategy execution so difficult. And we're going to look at 2 key things. Number 1 is lack of clarity. And I want to explain lack of clarity by this quote by Thomas Leonard. Some of us may know him. He was very instrumental in developing the coaching industry. He said, clarity affords focus. That is where all the strategy meetings, all the planning meetings are important. You need to be sure of what your strategic priorities are and what you need to do to achieve your objectives. We can't throw a dice to choose strategy. We can't do trial and error. You need to be clear on the goal. You need to be clear on what to do. So there must be rigor in the process of planning. So why is clarity important then? Because to succeed, you will need to throw yourself 100% into the strategy that you have chosen, not withholding anything, no half measures. Another reason why strategy execution is difficult, apart from general lack of clarity, is that many of us lack the ability to follow through despite distractions. And I have a quote here. It says, there will always be distractions, or there are always distractions if you allow them. This is by Tony La Russa. Distractions are another reason why execution of strategy is difficult. There will always be something competing for time and resources. And if we don't have clarity and focus, as we have just discussed, there will be a tendency to drift from executing our strategy when distractions come. I have an excellent example of this. Let's look at Kodak. How many of us are old enough to remember this brand, the camera brand, Kodak? In 1975, Kodak created the world's first digital camera in New York. The company put a lot of money into developing this product. But as they were about to launch, management put a hold on the project. Why? They were afraid that digital cameras will hurt the performance of their film division, which relied on non-digital cameras. So what happened is that they allowed their short-term financial objectives to distract them from a strategic breakthrough, which would have led them into the next few decades. The question is, where is Kodak today? I like this quote. Never allow what you want the most to be at the mercy of what you want at the moment. And one of the ways of dealing with distraction is accountability. It is said that what gets measured gets done. To reduce distraction and redirect efforts, we need to set very clear milestones so that we can measure periodically to ensure that we're on the right track. So we've looked at why some of the reasons why strategy execution can be difficult: potential lack of clarity, and then distractions in the process of executing. And we've also looked at some of the pointers on how to address these challenges. As we begin to round up, we're going to look at the 4 A's of strategy execution. These are factors we need to be aware of to achieve execution excellence. This concept of the 4 A's of strategy execution was developed by 2 gentlemen, Scott Nell and Kenneth Carrick from the University of Virginia. They have a book called Strategic Execution, Driving Breakthrough Performance in Business. It is a recommended text. If you're interested, we can help you order a copy. In this book, they introduce to us the 4 A's of strategy execution, which are alignment, ability, architecture, and agility. Alignment, ability, architecture, and agility. Let's look at each one. We'll start with alignment. This means that everyone involved in the execution of strategy must be working towards the same goal. Everyone must be aligned. This talks about the fact that as leaders, we need to ensure goal congruence in our teams. And to drive this home, I will share one of my best quotes. Ronald Reagan said that the greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things, but the one who gets the people to do the greatest things. So as leaders, we need to get our people to focus on one thing, which is the execution of the strategy. So to ensure efficient execution of strategy, all hands must be on the same plow. So we've looked at alignment. The second A of strategy execution is ability. And this speaks to the capacity to execute. And the question here is, are the relevant skills required to execute the strategy resident or available in the organization? Example, if you have a strategy to use social media to push your organization in 2024, do you have social media skills within your organization to execute on that strategy? They say that you can't give what you don't have, so you need to have what it takes from a skills perspective or a resource perspective to execute on your strategy, or we're in the realm of wishful thinking. And I also have an example of this. That's IBM, which used to be called the dancing elephant because it used to be such a dominant company and a big company in the technology industry. Now, in the 1980s, as I said, IBM was the most powerful technology brand and was a giant in the industry. But by 1993, they were making an 8 billion loss for the second quarter. So what did the board do? They had to accept the fact that they didn't have what it took internally to turn around the company. So they took a decision, which at that time was regarded as very strange, of appointing an external CEO, who at that time was a management consultant at McKinsey. I'm sure we know the consulting company McKinsey. Now, Getzner, that's the name of the new CEO, understood how to execute turnaround strategies. And that's how IBM altered its business plan from being a multinational technology provider to a shared services partner, which at that time was a very radical move. Now, the strategy worked and is hailed as one of the greatest corporate turnaround projects of all time. Why was it successful? IBM brought in the skills they needed at that time at CEO level to manage the corporate turnaround. Another way to resolve the ability challenge or the lack of skills challenge is collaboration. And collaboration is very powerful. It is another topic entirely. And if you want to learn more about collaboration, please take on the People Focused Leadership course by Grace Johnson Leadership Institute. And collaboration is just leaning or learning to work with others who have the skills that you need. Someone once called collaboration a talent multiplier. I really like that, a talent multiplier, because you have access to talents that you don't have internally. So you multiply your access to the pool of talents that are available in the marketplace. So we've looked at 2 of the 4 A's of strategy execution. We've looked at alignment, we've looked at ability. The 3rd A of strategy execution is architecture. And this answers the question, is your organization structured to execute? Is your organization caught in the web of bureaucracy? As business leaders, we need to ensure that the design of our organization is clear and understood by team members, and the design ensure work moves smoothly and efficiently, and that team members are empowered to make decisions at their level. So whether you have a hierarchical structure, a matrix structure, a flat structure, you need to study how work flows through your organization and make changes to ensure that work is done more efficiently without compromising quality or the integrity of the work done. The 4th A of strategy execution is agility. And this speaks to being able to respond quickly to opportunities that present themselves from time to time. It also speaks to the ability to stay ahead of the curve in the context of emerging trends in your geography or in your industry. It is important to say here that organizations need to be learning organizations to remain agile or nimble. And a practical thing you can do here is to regularly have town hall meetings in your organization to discuss the latest or emerging trends in your organization, or events in the wider world that affect your organization, for example, new technology. That's how, as an organization, we can remain agile in responding to the events that happen around us. Okay, so once again, the 4 A's of strategy execution are alignment, ability, architecture, and agility. I've come to the end of my presentation. I trust I've been able to add value this afternoon. If you have questions, please feel free to send them to the email address on the screen or put them in the chat box. We will take time to answer those questions. But before I leave, I would like to share this quote to end my presentation. This quote is by John P. Cotter. And he says, leaders establish the vision for the future and set the strategy for getting there. Leaders establish the vision for the future and set the strategy for getting there. I believe that through this conference, we will learn as leaders to create and develop and share compelling visions, get towards being part of building our nation and Africa as a whole. And not just that, I also believe that we will take the responsibility of equipping ourselves to execute on those visions, so that at the end of it all, we'll all be able to experience the nation and the continent we have all dreamt of. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Damilola Ajayi, for a very rich presentation. So much was compressed into his discussion. And I want to appreciate you very sincerely. So many nuggets there. I just want to call out some of the nuggets that I was able to, apart from the last one, which I think is excellent. Leaders establish the vision for the future and set the strategy for getting there. I want to emphasize some other things that were said in the course of that presentation. For instance, he said that average people have great ideas. Legends have great execution. You want to write that down, you want to make a mark in your lifetime, then keep that type of a saying to heart. He also said this by Boris Chang, that without a strategy, execution is aimless. Without execution, strategy is useless. So much to take away there. And like he said in the course, towards the end of his presentation, if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat box. So just go ahead and do that. After the third presentation, we will be reading out and taking your questions, trying to address some of your questions. I want to acknowledge a few of our participants at this time before we go on. I want to acknowledge Reverend Elizabeth Awo. I want to acknowledge Akure Sumisola. I also want to thank Chinedu Sike for joining us. I want to acknowledge as well Ini Abasi for being here with us. Also Chinedu Egunde for being here with us. Ken Adebowale, you're welcome. Oluwaseun Fajubi Paul, you're welcome. And I also want to especially acknowledge the students and staff of Success Bridge Schools for being with us. So many of them were joining with one link. You're all welcome. At this time, I want to go to the second presentation for today, which will be given by Dr. Kenny Akins, one of the speakers for the conference. And I'll be yielding the floor. Okay, before I yield the floor to her, I'd like to read out her profile. Can I have the profile, media team, if you can have the profile? Thank you so much. Dr. Kenny Akins is an entrepreneur, motivational speaker, thought leader, and pastor with almost 3 decades of active service in ministry work. She is the president of SWAT, which means Saving Women of Today, and the convener of the 3D Woman concept. Both platforms she uses to cater for the needs and welfare of women and children. She is also the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Success Bridge Schools in Lekki, with about 200 children under her watch and care. She is blessed with 3 grown children who are actively involved in her ministry work. Please join me to welcome Dr. Kenny Akins to give our second presentation of the conference. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. And I'm so excited to be here this afternoon, speaking on this special edition of the GJLI conference for this year. My greatest appreciation goes to the president and founder for the privilege and opportunity to be here. Today, I'm going to be talking to a special group of people who are between the ages 24 to 40. They constitute the labor force in any economy. And today I'm going to be talking on what I've titled Tomorrow Matters. Tomorrow Matters. It's a generational leadership focus topic that I believe many of us will draw strength from. I'm going to be using a few references. Firstly, I'm going to be using statistical publications of 2012. I'm also going to be using The Future is African by the Council of Foreign Relations, written in 2020. These are reviews and updates and statistics of the dynamics of this age bracket. I'm also going to be using 1 or 2 Bible references and excerpts from a book I read some time back, Buying the Future by Mensa Otabil. And I would like to start with a quote that says that tomorrow starts today. We all know that quote, but please allow me paraphrase by saying that tomorrow starts with you. The world is now in our hands, especially in the hands of this special age bracket. And I'm going to be given a few records, a few statistics that I got from the publication in 2012, which says that Nigeria has a labor force of over 80 million people. And as of 2020, which was just 3 years ago, Nigerians aged 25 to 34 years accounted for about 25 million of these people. Ages between 35 to 44 made the second largest with over 20 million. So if we add that chunk together, we have well over 45 million, almost 50 million of this 80 million population that form a huge representation of the labor force of our economy. The second reference from a report in The Future is African by Council of Foreign Relations, which was written in December 22, projected that by 2050, Africa's population will double, and that by 2100, 1 in 3 people on Africa, on the earth, will be African. This means that by the end of the century, sub-Saharan Africa, which already has an extraordinary young population, will be home to almost half of the young people in the world. What this implies is the strategic role that we young people will have, that we young people the role we will play in the future of our economy. And if we do not take into cognizance the things that we do, as little as the decisions we make at the workplace, in our lives, then this future that we are hopeful to get will only be a mirage. Now, let me start by sharing the VIS model of nation building with us very briefly because of my time. The VIS model says that before a nation can be fully built to the standard with which it wants to see, the people, especially the labor force, the people in the labor brackets, must have certain values. The I, which represents interpretation, I'm going to go a bit into that. And then the solution that we are ready to fulfill if we have to see the world that we want to see. What is a value system? A value system is a set of beliefs that shapes our lives. It originates from the values we receive from our parents, from leaders, from mentors, from our superiors, even our community as a whole. But that is not enough. As we grow older, we are expected to use our own powers, the powers of our self-awareness, the power of our creativity, the power of our imagination, and the choices we make to either affirm what we have learned or create a need or a set of values of perspective that will change the narrative. Now, I would like to share with us very briefly 2 value systems that is going to help us to be able to properly interpret the situation of our nation and then profile the right solution. We have 2 systems of values, that is operational. And I would just like to take a few references from the scriptures. We all know the story of Esau and Jacob. From the scriptures, we read there that Rebecca was pregnant, and the scripture says that there were 2 nations in her womb. I got excited when I realized that God, in his own infinite mercy, could liken one person to a nation. In other words, when you have one person, that person is a representation of a race, of a populace, of a humanity. And you and I can be representations of our nation. It says 2 nations and 2 people. And it says one will be stronger than the other. Now, I'm going to make a contrast between the Esau system and the Jacob system because it applies to our nation. The Esau system talks about a nation, a people, a person who is short-term in their perspective. Everything they're thinking of is just about now. Everything they're thinking about is how the choices they make will be beneficial for them at the expense of tomorrow. They want immediate gratification, and we see a lot of that play out in our economy today. We see a lot of greed and selfish acts, selfish motives. We see that they are a set of people who use the old and the archaic way of solving problems to look at the state of the economy. On the other hand, the Jacob system is a system that operates with long-term benefits. They delay gratification with sustainability and growth in mind. They think of how the nation is going to be built. They think of saving a reservoir for tomorrow. They are they are leaders who are first followers. They are leaders who are first people focused. They are ready to serve so that whatever they are able to get can transcend into future generations. And any nation operating under the Esau kind of system will definitely serve the Jacob economies. And that is what we have seen play out, in our economy. Let me quickly say a few things about paradigms and molds. Okay, so I read in a book some time ago how cups and some of the things we manufacture in our industry are being made. And the first thing is that a mold has to be made first. When the mold is made, depending on the product or the shape of what you want that product to look like, you carve out a mold first. When you carve out a mold, then you begin to pour the liquid that you want, so that the shape of that product can come out exactly as you want the mold, as the mold is being created. And then at the end of the day, what you get out is a cup. And the interesting thing about this is how our values are formed and they are shaped. From that one mold, we can create 1,000 cups. We can create 1,000 plates. We can create 1,000 products from that one mold. Now imagine what happens if the mold is faulty. In the same vein, if you have a faulty mold and liquid or content is being poured into that faulty mold, what happens eventually at the end of the day is that you have a faulty set of products. This is the way our values have been. My challenge to the young people of today is that we have been so much, bombarded with all kinds of wrong values, and we are being molded. We are being shaped by the kind of mold that our leaders are presenting right before us. And there is a tendency for us not to look inwards, to ask ourselves relevant questions, and to allow ourselves to be molded the way the faulty molds are. In other words, our values, our paradigms, they dictate the policies and the priorities of any economy. If you have a faulty leader who is faulty as a result of the mold and the makeup, then what we have is going to be a generation of people who are faulty, a generation of people whose values are not set right. Now, values, talking about Esau kind of value system and Jacob kind of value system, is something that is prevalent in our society. In the developed countries, we find a lot of people, we find that the growth of the economy has been such a case because the value systems are right. The systems are not faulty. And because the systems are not faulty, it is only needful, it is only going to be seen that what comes out, the product that comes out, the outcome of the product is something that is lasting. Now, let me quickly talk about interpretations. I'm going to be talking about the 4 S that represents how we can interpret the problems of our economy and how we can provide the right solutions. When we talk about interpretations, we talk about how we perceive our situation and provide solutions, how we perceive our problems, how we take our problems. A lot of our leaders are nonchalant. A lot of our young people are nonchalant. Everybody keeps complaining. Nobody is ready to take the bull by the horns. Now, going back to the same story of Esau and Jacob, because I've laid a foundation about, this set of people with the right perspective, with the right system, with the right values, also exhibiting different types of outcome. Now, Esau was so hungry, and that is what we find prevalent in our nation, a nation like Nigeria. With the kind of statistics that we have seen, if we continue to have a set of hungry people who do not get their values right, we're going to run into trouble. We are going to sell the future. We will not be able to know the power of negotiation. Now, he was so hungry, and he went to his brother and said, I need a pot of stew. Further into some of the study we've heard about the story of these 2 brothers, it got so bad that Jacob negotiated for a better future. He said, give me your birthright. And there, the brother said, what is my birthright to me? I want to challenge our young people. Do not sell your birthright. Do not sell your future. Now, few things I'm going to say about the way we perceive our problems. Now, when he told him he wanted to sell his birthright, the first thing he said to him was, what would have expected that he would have, tried to renegotiate or try to find out, is there any other thing we can do? Can you even show me the recipe? Can you tell me how you have done it? But he was so hungry at that time, and he had a blurry perception of what tomorrow would look like. The first thing I would say to our young people is never negotiate on an empty stomach. Never negotiate when you are tired. Never negotiate or over-exaggerate your problem, because it's not as bad as our leaders portray it to be. He said to him, he said, what is my birthright to me? He said, give me this pot of, whatever you call it, this porridge or whatever you have. He says, if you don't give me, I'm going to die. The truth of the fact is he didn't die. He eventually died, but it wasn't as a result of hunger. Now, the Jacobs understand that they need to deprive themselves of the pleasures of today to be able to gain the benefits of tomorrow. The Esau's sell what they have today at the detriment of their future. How are you perceiving the situation of the country? How do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as part of the problem, or do you see yourself as part of the solution? Esau came in, he was a hunter. One would have expected that the hunter should be the one with the meat, but he was the one who was hungry. In the same vein, we as a nation, Nigeria, Africa as a nation, as a continent, we are one of the largest producing oil nations, and yet we import our oil. That is, it's quite contradictory to the nature of who we truly are. How can an oil-producing nation be hungry? How can an oil-producing nation be importing? So one of the 4 things I would like to say to be able to encourage us on these levels of interpretation, if we are to interpret accordingly the state of our nation and how we are supposed to build, and I want us to take a cue from the life of Queen Elizabeth. I read an article about her that when she was way much younger, during the time of the World War II, she escaped death as a result of the ongoing war. And at the age of 14, because they had to take her and her sister to escape this war front, and despite the fact that she was saved, at the age of 14, she did a broadcast on radio. She did a broadcast on radio, cheering and encouraging other children who didn't have the kind of privilege that she had. And she was encouraging them and letting them know that their future would be bright, it was going to be great, and that they shouldn't give up. At 18, she joined the auxiliary service for the women group, and she volunteered herself as a mechanic and a driver. We all read the story of Queen Elizabeth today, and we felt, or we think, or we've always thought that she's had it rosy. She volunteered. She volunteered as a driver. She volunteered as a mechanic at the time. And then when the World War II and all the war issues were over, she went to the streets. They made a campaign. There was a lot of celebration. And at the age of 25, she became queen at the age of 25. This woman is one of the longest standing monarchs in history after celebrating 70 years of her reign. Now, we can learn 4 lessons from the life of Queen Elizabeth. Number 1, selflessness. And I think that is one of the things that is missing in our time. Once someone feels that they are satisfied or they are okay, they don't care about how every other person felt. Despite the fact that she was saved at the time, despite the fact that she was already, she had her own security, she was still able to lend her voice for others, to be able to find a place in the society. I also see here service. That's the second thing. She volunteered. A lot of our young people are running away from volunteering. Everybody wants to be king. Everybody wants to be high up there overnight. She volunteered. She wasn't waiting for an opportunity. She created one. She lent her voice for others. Number 3, S, is security. How are we securing our national values? She preserved the resources, both human and non-human, of the British monarch at the time. And lastly, a sense of responsibility, sense of social service. As at today, British Empire today is worth $7.5 trillion as at today. just because someone decided to properly interpret the state of the art and was able to look, was forward looking in the possibilities of creating a sustainable nation. I want to encourage those of our young people today: selflessness, service, security, a sense of social responsibility. Do not wait for opportunities. I will encourage us in our space. Are you an entrepreneur? Are you a teacher? Are you a farmer? Are you a cleaner working in an organization? Where you are, how can you deploy this 4S? The sense of selflessness, the sense of service, a sense of social responsibility and security at the workplace in order to be able to create a sustainable, environment. The last model, I talked about the 3 models, the VIS model, the values, the paradigms, the molds that we've created, the way we are being shaped, the kind of things that we are seeing our leaders do and how we want to change the narrative, the kind of interpretation we are bringing to the workplace, the kind of way and manner we are trying to approach the state of our nation, because the future begins with you. It begins with you and I. With this population, this boom in our young people, with our ability to be innovative, with our ability to be able to job creation, with our ability to be able to be forward-looking, how do we want to create a sustainable nation that will be productive and sustainable? The last part is the solution dimension. I would now like to quickly tell us a story. I know this story is quite relatable. So some time ago, I had a dog, and for whatever reason, the dog died. I made up my mind I wasn't going to have another one. I had another one, it got lost, and I made up my mind. I said, you know what, at this point, I'm done. And most times we get overwhelmed when we have tried and tried and tried over and over again, especially when we are not seeing the change happen. Because someone or anyone who is solution-oriented will always see the change that they desire. If you're a solution-minded person, you will see the change that you want to see. And then finally, I decided, okay, you know what, let's get another dog. My daughter went out and saw this dog. There were 4 of them. And then she picked one. She went there, and later she was told by the owner of the dog that 2 of the dogs had been bought. And then she went there, and on this fateful day, this sickly dog, she saw 2 of them. One was sickly, the other one was fine. And everybody wants a fine dog. Everybody wants something that will not, become too much of a task. We all want good things, but we don't want to do the work. We don't want to put in the work. And then while she was still contemplating on which of the dogs she would pick, the other sickly dog walked up to her and crawled up to her and, clung to her feet. And then she said she just felt that, touch, in her. She just felt that desire in her to help this dog, and she decided to take the sickly one. And then within a short period of time, this dog got good care and everything. And, it was a matter of weeks, the dog was all over the place, running up and down, and the dog was fine. Each time she went back to the owner of the dog, she kept on seeing this other dog who seemed healthy, but this time around, without care and attention, falling sick every day. She would come to me and say, Mom, this dog is sick. What can I do? How can I help? I said, well, I'm sorry, we already have one. I can't take on another dog. And many times we are like that because we feel that we've taken on a particular task. We are probably, it's quite tiring to do more. And then she said she wasn't going to take it. And then last week, she walked up to me and said, Mom, this dog is really sick and I fear it might die. I said, well, I'm sorry, it's just a dog. I won't be able to help. We already have one. I don't have the time and all of that. I have my own work and yesterday she ran into my office and was weeping. And I said, what happened? She said, Mom, I got to that place and this dog died right in front of my eyes, just right there where I was. I saw the dog, and the dog was being given all manner of, medication that they were not supposed to give it, and it was such a horrible experience, and she was weeping. But that's just a story I've told you. But she made a statement that stood with me. I said, it's okay, it's just a dog. She said, Mom, I know it's a dog, but I could have done something. And that really, really, in fact, that was the catching up moment for me. I want to throw the same question to us this afternoon as I round up. in your space where you are, based on the things that we can see in our nation. Our nation is currently sick right now. Our nation is currently down right now. Our nation is asking for help. Our nation is barely breathing. My question to us this afternoon is, what can you do? She said, Mom, I could have done something. In your workspace, in your business, in your career, with the people around you, with your ability to be creative, what can you do? What can you do with the resources that God has placed on the inside of you? How can you harness the skills that you have been endowed with? How can you improve, learn, unlearn, and relearn new things so that we can begin to put all these resources together and begin to see the change that we desire? She walked up to me and said, Mom, I could have done something. She said, I could have done something last week, but I neglected. I could have done something 3 days ago, but I neglected because I felt somebody else would do it and nobody did it. The challenge I'm throwing to us this afternoon as we leave this segment, I'm going to give us a call to action. And the call to action for each and every one of us under the sound of my voice is, number one, identify the field that you are. Are you in the educational sector? Are you in the health sector? Are you in politics? Are you in manufacturing? Are you in the legal system? Wherever you are, can you identify 3 problems? Can you identify 3 problems? Can you interpret the problems well? Can you engage the power of the 4 S? Can you, deploy the power of your negotiation? How to negotiate where you are, how to negotiate the situation, the challenges you're going through, and the steps you want to take immediately. And when I mean immediately, don't forget the concept of the mold. Just one mold, but 1,000 cups. Just one paradigm, but 1,000 people, 1,000 images, 1,000 values. Can you immediately, I said, number one, identify the field you are, identify the problems that are there, and profile solution, creative solution that can help one person, because I believe that you are in that space for a reason. You are in that space for a purpose, and you are in that space for a timing. I want to believe that if we can take on this assignment, the feedback that we will get will be truly, truly amazing. And the change that we want to see in our nation, building our nation, getting our nation to be more sustainable and to be more productive will begin just right from where you are. Thank you very much for this session. And if you have any questions, please use the chat room and we'll be willing to answer your questions. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kenny Akins, for a very rich presentation, speaking to not just the next generation, really, but to all of us, and reminding us that tomorrow matters. Very importantly, the picture of the mold, which is about the values that we are able to imbibe, not just the values that we received, which is a very important point she made. We receive values from the community, from parents, from tribe, and so on. But we ourselves should step back and determine what kind of values do we want to embrace and cultivate. And that mold will cause the transformation we're looking for in this nation. So we want to appreciate Dr. Kenny Akins for that presentation. You can put your questions in the box, the chat box, like she said. At this time, we want to welcome the convener, the main convener of the conference, who is the founder and president of the Grace Johnson Leadership Institute, Grace Obi Johnson. I'll just read her profile very briefly. Grace Johnson is the founder and CEO of the Grace Johnson Leadership Institute. Grace holds an Associate of Arts, that is an AA degree in psychology, and a Bachelor of Science degree, or BSc, in Organizational Leadership and Management. Both degrees were awarded by Regent University, Virginia Beach, Virginia, United States of America. She is currently pursuing an MSc degree. She brings more than 40 years of leadership and leadership experience to this forum, having founded church planting organization, that is the Logos of Flame Ministries, in February of 1986, with churches in different locations in Lagos, Nigeria. A number of pastors and other professionals in leadership positions who are serving different parts of the world were students under her tutelage, including myself, who is moderating today. Grace is a leadership coach and a gifted teacher. She has spoken in leadership conferences in a couple of nations. Grace is running with a strong passion to develop, people-focused leaders who will use their leadership positions to serve the corporate establishments, to serve government, civil service, and the church world. She's currently pursuing her MSc in Organizational and Business Psychology. At this time, I yield the floor to Grace Orbie Johnson, the founder and president of the Institute, to give her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barrister Chike Kweme. It's been an amazing time together. I think the whole thing is flowing the way it should be. The first two speakers have challenged us in ways that should set our minds thinking. And I am going to present to us what I title Exploring the Concept of Nation Building via Leadership. I've been a student of leadership for most of my life. I found myself being in leadership from my teenage years, and that is what I'm still doing. And that has led to the founding of the Grace Johnson Leadership Institute, which is an organizational leadership and management institute. That's what the institute is about, organizational leadership and management institute. And you can find our courses online. You will learn quite a lot about organizations, what it takes to run an organization. And our website is made available so you can check us out. But I need to get into what we have at this moment that has to do with exploring the concept of building a nation. You've just heard that I'm currently a student at a university in the United Kingdom, and I'm still pursuing studies on leadership. Leadership is so important, so important that we don't just assume, one doesn't assume I'm a leader. You have to know what it takes to be a leader. And by way of introduction, I want to take us through the importance of leadership. Leadership has always been viewed as masculine in nature, and with the impression that it has to be authoritarian, strong, powerful, top-bottom leadership style. For what we have witnessed, this style of leadership has been known to breed resentment and mistrust. In the past 50 years, leadership has been undergoing some metamorphoses, changes, and evolving into more democratic leadership style. Contemporary leadership is expected to model diversity and inclusion of both genders, race, assimilation of cross-cultural divides, and demographics. The world is grappling with many complex challenges, from catastrophic climate breakdown, like fires, floods, droughts, political instability in nations, famine, forced migration, to global inequality with people searching for authentic leadership. We found that no one individual leader has all the answer to the global challenges facing our world. And this is why leadership is so important. We can have all the skills, the technical skills that one requires to run an organization, to run a nation. But if we don't have authentic leaders, we'll run into the problems we already are in the nations of the world, in particular, our own nation, Nigeria. So leadership is so key to us today. And we are focusing on Nigeria, we are focusing on Africa, and we want to look at leadership culture in Africa. Africa is often described as a continent ravaged by war and poverty, and often called a dark continent, and sometimes worse descriptions. Africans have been made to believe they have nothing to offer themselves, talk less the rest of the world. The history and effects of colonialism play a big role in the mental depravity of Africans. The African mind has been educated to be receivers, consumers, and not producers and not givers. Therefore, this type of mentality erodes our creativity. Maybe you also have been saying things like that. Africa is poor, Africa needs help. The United Nations should come to our aid. Once there's a problem, they're saying the government of the nation should do something, United Nations should do something, and much of the time you hear America should rise up. The education system over the centuries that we've had in Africa does not expose students to the researches, to do researches on projects for themselves. Rather, they are made dependent on information delivered to them by their teachers. This has produced lazy thinkers, closed minds, incapable of exploring the capabilities of their ingenuity. All of what I've just mentioned may sound like the usual blame game. We all have that game of blaming whoever, the government, the United Nations, and the rest of the world. Africa still depends on the whims of her colonial masters, manipulating their economy and their way of life. Therefore, the Africans are often lured away from their great continent to seek better life. And sometimes we say greener pasture in the West. Out in the Western world, Africans are breaking all records of success in many fields throughout, although not without intimidation, of racism. To bring about a lasting change, Africa must change her orientation from a consumer mentality to that of a creator and sustainer. Our education system has to be reconstructed, restructured. Africa is rich in human and natural resources, but we need a new mindset to take ownership of what God has richly endowed us. This new mindset will start by Africans appreciating who they are and the fact that God, the Creator, created human beings as equals, allocating our regions, whether it is African continent, the European. He allocated our regions to us through his infinite wisdom. Africans are no less humans than their counterparts in the West. God is God of all races, black, white, brown, red, whatever color you want to give anybody. God does not discriminate against his creation. Now, I want to take us through the culture, the leadership culture in Africa, the leadership culture. We have something we can offer ourselves. We have something we can offer ourselves, and from what we have, we can offer the rest of the world. The beautiful things that you find in the African society. So I start with African societies tend to be egalitarian within age groups. Within age groups, there seems to be a democratic way of relating. But when it comes to between, I take it again, within the age groups, we are egalitarian, which means we are democratic in the way we relate within our age groups. But when it comes to between the age groups, we have this hierarchical relationship. And that's where we find the eldership form of leadership within the African setting. As a result, leaders usually behave and are expected to behave paternalistically. You have the men dominating in leadership. And because we have that pattern of leadership in Africa, leaders bestow favor and expect obeisance from their followers. Now, this is what we find in our society. And I dare say this is not an ugly way of living our lives. We have what it takes to relate with one another in our age groups. We have the eldership pattern of leadership where we revere the elders. In each of these points that I'm raising, there are the positive side, there are the negative side, but we need to appreciate what is within our culture. We don't have to get that sense that what comes from the West is the best and the only way that we can live our lives and relate to people. So let's quickly look at leadership defined. There is no universal definition of leadership because leadership is complex. It is studied in different ways that require different definitions. But let me point out what leadership is not. Leadership is not a title. And if you reflect on what I've just said in the last slide, the leadership pattern in Africa, you find that title is a big thing for so many. If somebody is not addressed, Doctor, Reverend, Professor, the person feels insulted. But leadership is not the title. The title is not what makes you a leader. Leadership is not a position. You know, for some people, they choose not to function because they have not been given a position. You are the manager, you are the CEO. Leadership is not a position. And the big one here is leadership is not management. The managers manage things, they plan, they manage all that has been committed into their hands to manage. But managing things is different from leading people. A leader leads people. And a manager can equally be a leader if he or she had trained himself or herself on how to be a leader, has acquired the skills. And the last point I have on what leadership is not is that leadership is not personal attributes. Sometimes you find leaders who are eloquent, who are strong, and they are go-getters. Those attributes are personal to that leader. It doesn't mean that every leader has to have those personal attributes. So the attributes, because when a leader is outgoing, forceful, we think that's the right leader. But if you have a quiet kind of leader, you might despise him or her. And my fifth point of what leadership is not is that it is not necessarily masculine. That is what the emerging leader is of our time is working to see in our societies. Leadership, what then is leadership? You may ask. If it's not title, it's not position, it's not all that I've listed, what then is leadership? Leadership is a process. I need to emphasize that leadership is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. It's a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal. Every word in this statement needs to be carefully examined. It's a process. It takes an individual to influence a group of people, and they are to achieve a common goal. Leadership takes a process to develop. There are born leaders and there are made leaders. And I always say both the born leader and the made leader need training. You need to acquire leadership skills. Leadership is influencing, and it depends on how the leader chooses to influence the followers. But leadership is influencing. In our training, we let our students know that influencing is beyond just wanting people to follow you. It's a whole lot to say about influencing people. And the third point is that leadership occurs in groups. You might have heard the saying that if you say you're a leader and nobody is following you, well, that means you are taking a personal walk. But leadership occurs in groups. Leadership, the last point on what then is leadership. Leadership includes attention to common goals, a sense of achieving together. I have personally watched the way the American military generals, celebrate their success when they are called up and all their achievements are all read out, and that guy is standing there. His first response, as he thanks the people who had recognized the achievement, the next thing he does is he turns that achievement, those achievements that are attributed to his leadership, he turns it over to his team. He mentions their name. He tells stories of how they labored so hard, their sufferings, their pains, their sacrifices. So the leader includes everybody in his team in that success. It's a common goal that they were working for. The same thing that happens with the football team or soccer, whatever you call it. You don't celebrate just one person. Yes, individuals played their parts, but when the success comes, it comes for everybody, achieving together. Now, these are the things, okay, let's get to the last part then is leadership. I give the definition here. Success cannot be attained without people. Therefore, leadership is about people. Leadership, therefore, emphasizes people and service more than position and benefits. If we have a mind change on how we view leadership, our nation will be different. We know the negative way we view leadership. The leader is self-centered. The leader is concerned, is part of what I will expand on this in tomorrow time together. The African way, why we have all these tribal problems that exist amongst us is because of that leadership style in Africa, that's eldership. So you find people who are looking at their position, people who are looking at their tribes, people who want to look at their families. And at the end of the day, the purpose of being a leader to a nation is defeated. I like the analogy that the last speaker gave us about Esau and Jacob. One person represents a nation, the other child, a nation. So when leadership is taught, we don't assume we know. It has to be taught. Everything about life is about learning. And if we don't have a large appetite for learning, we as Africans will still be lagging behind. But the purpose of this conference is to challenge us, is to stretch our minds about leadership and about nation building. Tomorrow, we are going to spend more time to look at what it takes to build a nation. Now, in the past 50 years, leadership has been emerging, like I said in my introduction. People no longer enjoy the top-bottom leadership, where one individual is at the top and giving all the orders and all the instructions and doesn't allow any other person to participate in decision-making. That leadership is gradually wearing off, if it hasn't gone, maybe 80% of it, especially since after COVID-19. The world changed. So the emerging leaders are really looking forward to one, collaboration. Collaboration. Bring your various visions. Now, this will require dying to your personal vision. Bring your various vision and let's work together in a community. Let's work together, your vision, my brother's vision, my sister's vision, my colleagues. We bring our vision together and see how we can marry this vision together for a common goal. That's leadership, collaboration. So the emerging leaders, especially the age group that the last speaker pointed to, 24 years to 40 years. Actually, in my research, I found that 50% of young Africans are in that age, within that age bracket. So let's bring all these dreams we have for our nation, all this desire we want to see. We want to love our nation. We want to make our nation great. We want to be proud of where we come from. Then you have to embrace this leadership that incorporates other people. No man, no woman has all the answers that the world needs. Collaboration. Number two, there has to be shared vision for the nation. I'm talking about the nature or characteristics of the emerging leaders. They love collaboration. In fact, let me get back to that collaboration. When you open your phone, be it Apple or any other one, as is booting, you see different companies, the names of different companies that contributed to that one phone in your hand. There's collaboration out there. You have something, I have something, we need to come together and put them together. That's what it takes to build a new, call it a new nation or to build a nation. The second thing is that shared vision. What is the vision that we have? When we begin to collaborate together, you find that we will all agree on one vision. Because when everybody shares their vision, we find a way to create a synergy where we can pull together and sum it up as one nation. The third characteristics of the emerging leaders is culture of the society. There's need to review the culture that we were born into. There's need to review it. There's need to study it. Then there's need to engage the culture. Because in every culture, there are the positive aspects and there are the negative aspects. And we need to review this culture. We don't assume that our culture is so terrible, so we want to import another culture. We need to understand the culture where you live, where you work, and where you were born into. Understand the culture and begin to learn how to engage this culture with the values that you have that can make for a better society. And lastly, in my studies and in my research, I discovered that we can actually design a nation. We can design a nation. It still takes this collaboration. It still takes us having an understanding of working in a team. You have a team, let's say a team of 5 people, they come from different tribes. The 5 of you from different tribes. How do we come together? with our different opinions, different interpretations, different cultures, how do we come together and design a nation? And please know that the problem of tribes in Africa, it's not just Africa that has that challenge. The Western world call theirs race, so there's racism, and all these problems create a lot of challenges where people lose their lives, lose their property because of belonging to one tribe or the other. Note that it is possible to create a synergy. I will talk more on this tomorrow. It's possible to create a synergy, and we design. It is very possible. That has been happening in the Western cultures of the world. It is possible to design the nation that we want to see. So I want to round up on my topic, exploring the concept of nation building via leadership. We already have a government that is running. I am with you. We are not happy. We are not excited. It's not what we asked for that we have. And we are seeing how, the election results are being handled. You see the progression. But I want to challenge us. If these people happen to stay in power till 2031, what will be my vision and your vision for Nigeria? If they remain in power till 2031, what we all have been doing probably all our lives is the blame game. We complain, we say the politicians are not doing the work well, and in our minds, we kind of have resigned our nation, the entire nation, to politicians. And we feel they are the answers that are needed. What should be the strategy, the strategic vision? The first speaker emphasized on strategy. What should be the strategic vision we can have for our nation? And if you are listening from any other nation, please, you are welcome. You can put your nation in what we are discussing. What could be the strategic vision? And our vision is the direction that we desire the nation to go. What strategic vision, what direction can we put before ourselves for our dear nation? Somebody has to start somewhere. The first speaker, laid it out beautifully well for us. If you have a strategy, a great strategy, but you don't have a great way to implement your great strategy, then it's of no use to anyone. So we need to we need to change our mindset about our nation. Let's see our nation as ours, given to us by God. You have a stake in the nation. You have something to offer the nation. You have the power to change the direction the nation is going. But I must say to you that it takes time. And the next question I have for us is, what action points can we engage in? Can you see the collaboration? What action points? What can we say? Let us do. I am saying to us, let's create a community of thinkers that can come together and begin to process the problems of our nation and also provide solutions. We cannot afford to keep complaining, blaming the colonial masters, well, they are doing what they are doing, and they have people within us who are empowering them to do what they are doing. But if we can own our nation and own our responsibilities to our nation, and start saying what one of the American presidents said, that you don't have to ask your nation what it can give you, but ask yourself, what can I give my nation? In this case, what can I give Nigeria in the next 8 years? What can I do to improve the situation in Nigeria? Who can you influence to join this platform? Who can you influence? This and more should be our focus, but it takes a process. Please don't miss it. It takes a process. We must start from scratch. Nobody builds a beautiful edifice without foundation. We need to go deep into the foundation and begin to assess, analyze, and begin to find ways. How did other people do it? Let's learn from them. Let's not say things like our own democracy is peculiar to us. The world does not exist alone. No nation exists alone. The more you study, you find that nations are interwoven in their activities, in their relationships. So we need to learn from people who have already succeeded and designed and then built a different nation from what they met. I want to challenge you that we invite you to join us. The Grace Johnson Leadership Institute is the one hosting this conference. And from time to time, we are going to be pushing out meetings that we want to come together, building a community of people who are ready to build bridges, economic bridges, relationship bridges, the bridges that have been broken in our nation. We'll be calling on you, and we encourage you to please follow us. And when we outline our meetings, we'll be glad to have you participate. You have something to offer. You are important. Your voice matters. You have something to offer. So join us as we begin to explore the concept of nation building via leadership. Thank you very much for being part of this conference.
Thank you, Grace Obi Johnson, the founder and president, CEO of the Grace Johnson Leadership Institute, for a very rich presentation, what I would call a challenge to us. And really, it's a challenge to collaboration, a challenge to joining forces together with like-minded individuals, potential and actual leaders for the transformation of this nation. And she spoke about other nations, indeed the continent of Africa and other societies. So this is the first day, this is just a taste of what is being explored in these 2 days. She has already informed you that there will be a richer, deeper discussion tomorrow in the second day of the program. I have been looking out for questions. It's like we are still processing all that's been said today. So no one has come forward with any questions yet. Incidentally, we are actually 4 minutes away from the time we had allocated for this first day of the conference. So I just want to take some time to acknowledge some of our participants. I want to acknowledge my friend Isioma Utomi, the director of the Center for Values in Leadership, which is founded by Professor Pat Utomi. I know most of us know of Professor Utomi. Isioma, you're most welcome. My good friend and colleague, Barrister Tom Ivory, is also with us. Thank you so much. Also, I want to recognize Lillian Okereke, Chinedu CK, Emeka Nzeribe, Famonehi Stephen Adeleye, and others. If I didn't call you by name, just know that you are most warmly welcome to this first day of the conference. So I want to let us know that in the chat, there is a link to a feedback form, which I would encourage all of us to copy this out quickly before we wrap up this session. Copy the link, or you could click it perhaps, and let's have your thoughts, feedback on the session so far. You can also submit any questions you might have through this medium, which we'll try to address. Let me repeat what I said at the earlier part of the session of this first day of the event, that tomorrow's event, albeit we are focusing on the physical attendance, if you cannot make it physically, you can still log in with the same link provided for today. The physical gathering will be at the campus of the Grace Johnson Leadership Institute, situated at number 17 Amara Olu Street, Agedingbi, Ikeja. So please, we would love to have you physically with us. And you could also invite others who are not part of today's program to join us tomorrow for the second day of the conference. We're still looking at leadership and nation building, a very topical issue. All of us must bring ourselves to the table and collaborate, share ideas, and keep this conversation going for the ultimate transformation of our nation and our society. Thank you very much for joining today. I want to just re-emphasize some things I said at the earlier part of the program about the vision of the Grace Johnson Leadership Institute. The Grace Johnson Leadership Institute is an organizational leadership and management institute. Its program is people-focused leadership. The vision, the long-term strategic vision of the Grace Johnson Leadership Institute is to be the universal leadership institute developing people-focused leaders for organizations who will lead with people skills in building a more humane society. The mission and objectives of the Institute include developing people skills, developing skills in personal mastery, developing better interpersonal relationships in home life and a more humane work environment, developing better caring institutions, and better collaboration within and with the public service. The Institute runs a people-focused leadership educational program with the following 7 modules. First module is personality types of the leader and people skills. Secondly, organizational behavior. Thirdly, organizational communication. Fourth, leading teams and creating shared vision. Fifth, conflict management. Sixth, culture and leadership. And 7, reflections on people-focused leadership. So I want to encourage us to log on to the website. I actually don't have the facility to display that. Can the media help us with the web address so that our participants can find out more about the modules of the program? Media team, can you assist with that? Okay, it is, okay, I was hoping it would be displayed. It's been displayed in the chat box. It's www.pflconsult.com. So please, you can just click that, copy it out of the chat box, and we hope that you would find that you'd visit the site and sign up for the modules. Thank you very much for this time together. At this point, I want to bring the session to a close, and just to say that I hope to see us all tomorrow, hopefully virtually, but if not, hopefully physically, I meant to say, but if not, then you can always join virtually. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. I was just saying, I've seen my good friend, Dr. Humphrey Akanazu is with us. He's the founder of Rome Business School Nigeria in GRA Ikeja. He's honored me by making me a faculty, and I've delivered several lectures there. Thank you, Dr. Akanazu, for your presence with us virtually. We hope to see you tomorrow as well.